Now, in Britain, I've had so much going on, starting with the Savile case, but even before the Savile case with the bigwigs in England. I've read some of the articles here where even British lords came out in mainstream were getting young boys off the street, basically. One of them had a strange thing. He liked to have the young boy poop on top of a glass pane, and the Lord would sit underneath it and watch it. It's a strange thing, but I can't fathom it at all. But you have all these weirdos in positions of power, you understand. And I think it goes with power myself. I think they're psychopathic perverts, even to get up there, you see. But you also have, you see, networks and societies. Everyone who has to join it has become a Mason. Remember, low Masons know nothing at all, according to Albert Pike. But the other ones, they know more what the world agenda is, because Freemasonry was a revolutionary arm, basically, for centuries to bring in this new world order across the world. But anyway, and they were a front for the big boys that had been around for a lot longer. This article here says, abuse scandal probes widen. The man who may hold the key to the UK's biggest paedophile network ever, Charles Napier, could provide vital evidence for police investigations investigating a child abuse scandal spanning 3 decades. And it says in the picturesque Dorset town of Sherburn, Charles Napier is an upstanding member of the community. That actually generally is what they mean by in Masonry upstanding, by the way, for those who don't know. He is known as a respected retired language teacher, playwright and theatre director. Last month he gave a lecture on William Shakespeare at the town's literary festival, but Napier's sordid past threatens to drag him into the heart of new inquirers into a child abuse scandal spanning 30 years. Evidence now being examined by Metropolitan Police. Detectives link Napier to Peter Wrighton, one of Britain's most high-profile paedophiles. Wrighton is now dead, but Napier is not. Now 68, living with his mother in the West County, he could prove a vital witness to the unfolding police inquiry into child abuse on a massive scale in this country. Both men were linked to a shadowy organisation called the Pedophile Information Exchange, which campaigned in the 70s and 80s for what they called the age of child love to be reduced to 4. Remember that article I read the other day? It was from members of the Planned Parenthood International, who, along with the United Nations, is pushing the same agenda again. And you think these people aren't organized worldwide, and they belong to the United Nations agendas? You better question this United Nations, folks, and get rid of it. Anyway, Wrighton was a founder of PIE. Napier, its one-time treasurer. Wrighton, incredibly, was also one of Britain's leading child protection specialists. But when police raided his house in Evesham, Worcester, in 1992, they found not only hardcore child abuse images from Amsterdam, but a quarter century of correspondence between paedophiles in Britain and around the world. You can imagine how much money that was worth for that list of people. The probe led police to the kitchen of a flat in South London, where they found a letter from Napier, who had a child assault conviction 20 years before, boasting of his life in Cairo as a British Council teacher. He bragged of easy access to young boys and how he could send obscene images back to Britain in diplomatic bags. And I'll go on with this because I'm just so sick of it. People never catch on. They're so contaminated themselves with what they've watched on TV, they can't get outraged about it. Back with more after this. Hi folks, I'm back. We're cutting through the matrix and talking about how these characters would groom children. And this article I'm reading right now from the Mirror, Daily Mirror, talks about that and how they groomed children, gave them cigarettes, of course, and alcohol, and how they would get the other ones to go along with it. They knew how to groom the children to go along with what the guys wanted to do. And it's been going on for an awful long time by very important people. This other article here too says that more former Rochdale Council bosses may face members of Parliament's questions over a sex grooming case. I wouldn't hold my breath on it because they don't want to open up a can of worms, because believe you me folks, they shouldn't be going after the ones who are dead. They should be going after the ones who are in it today, and it's rife, and I think even worse today than it was even then, and that's bad enough. Because more council bosses are expected to be called before Parliament to explain why cries for help from child sex victims were ignored by those who were supposed to protect them. It comes after Rochdale Council's former Chief Executive Roger Ellis appeared before the Home Affairs Committee on Tuesday, also giving evidence for Mr. Ellis' successor Jim Taylor and Sarah Rowbottom, a frontline sexual health worker, unfortunate name for her, who revealed the full extent of the scandal to the members of Parliament. And they said the committee had not yet decided who would be called as witnesses, but when they meet, they're likely to want to explore Mr. Ellis' evidence that neither he nor his senior managers were told social workers were reporting dozens of cases where young girls were being sexually exploited by gangs of older men. And earlier this week, MPs heard that during the time the abuse was reported by social workers, the Council's Director of Children's Services role was held over the years by Terry Pigott, good name, eh? Steve Titcombe, where do they get these guys from? And Cheryl Eastwood. You can't make this stuff up. They also heard that Steve Garner had been in charge of Children's Social Services team from 2009. And then this one too, the cover-up continues. Lord Peers, this is the British Lords and Peers and the Sirs, demand that the child abuse investigations be dropped. I knew they'd say this, because they have to protect their own tarnished asses, so to speak. It says, as we detailed earlier this week, is from 21st Century Wire. The establishment is desperate to draw a line under any serious independent investigations into organised paedophile rings and child abuse in British establishments because exposure threatens individuals who sit within the very power structure of multiple institutions, including government, the judiciary, the police, childcare, children's charities and the BBC. They want our horror to end with their fixer, Jimmy Savile, and the sacking of BBC's Pope, George Entwistle, and quietly move on. The government moved to spike any further inquiry in the past and present existence of paedophiles in power as part of damage limitation exercise, a coordinated attempt to shut down the national conversation, despite overwhelming evidence that this is an organised, institutionalised disease. The Waterhouse inquiry into the North Wales boys' home sex abuse criminal network was a typical government-run whitewash where the establishment failed to probe into the heart of the problem, where institutional members covered for each other's interests, and where police fumbled evidence. They didn't fumble it, they were given orders, and failed to secure arrests of powerful men. In the end, the bureaucracy won, and justice was sadly lost. Tonight, too, I'll also put up an interview with one of the boys, the guys, he's a man now, but he was one in the boys' home. He tells you about how they give them, they took him to London, met very important people in big apartments, and they were amazed just getting into London from a boys' home, and given booze and cigarettes and all the rest of it, and then they were abused. And anyway, I'll put this up tonight too, and then to go into another one here, just following on with that, it says here that photographs of men abusing boys in the North Wales paedophile scandal were deliberately destroyed by the authorities. It was revealed today. That's the police and the judiciary. Sean Griffiths worked for the Clyd Council in the inquiry office in the 1994 Gillings, and 6 years later on the Waterhouse inquiry, which looked into the systematic abuse of the children's homes. She told ITV News that victim Steve Mesham's photos of alleged abuse were ordered to be destroyed. Ms. Mesham says photos captured lots of men raping boys, including a prominent conservative figure he accuses of abusing him. He says he could see men's faces clearly, but the police say they could not identify them from the pictures. You understand how it really works in this system. And I said it before, and you might laugh because you know the Uncle So-and-so's a Mason and he's okay. These are Masonic institutions, and Masons they will obey their superiors and forget their any oath to the public. In fact, they don't take an oath to the public, they take an oath to the Queen. So they do what they're told, and they destroy whatever they're told to do as well. It says, Miss Griffiths was asked, Mesham talked about photos he'd taken of abuse taking place. Do you know what happened to them? And the answer was, we were supplied with copies of court documents, but there was an order made for the book of photos to be destroyed. And then it says, so Mesham's photos of alleged abuse were destroyed? And she says, they were. Well, that's what's in court papers, official documents. And then it says, that could have been vital evidence? And the answer was, yes. She added there were people mentioned in the Waterhouse inquiry in 2000 who probably got away with the abuse. She said, I think probably there were, on the basis that the allegations were historical and there was nobody to corroborate what the complainants were saying or the files or registers to back up what they were saying. I imagine, yes, there are people who weren't convicted for their offence. Meanwhile, Labour MP Anne Clyde today revealed she had read the 1994 report by John Gillings in the House before it was pulped and called for it to be published. They pulped it and she read it. She read it and ordered it destroyed. Too many important folks. The pervs run your world for you. I'm not kidding about that. Back with more after this.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
Hi folks, we're back cutting through the matrix and talking about the crazy worlds. Crazy as a fox, of course, because it knows exactly where it's all supposed to go. And they've been training your children for years and years to try everything. Never mind all the stuff they make sure that they see on television. It's run by big corporations that bypass parents, basically, at least generation by generation. And until now, they're showing them to how to have orgies and everything else. I mean, this is it. This is a plan, folks, because once you've destroyed and created chaos, destroyed all it was, and then you create chaos, then you can run everything from governmental agencies to handle the chaos and fallout, and then guide the whole world into a new system, you see, of being a good little dopey kind of slave. It's almost here already. But here at theatre director, last month he gave a lecture on William Shakespeare at the Town's Literary Festival, but Napier's sordid past threatens to drag him into the heart of new inquirers into a child abuse scandal spanning 30 years. Evidence now being examined by Metropolitan Police. Detectives link Napier to Peter Wrighton, one of Britain's most high-profile paedophiles. Wrighton is now dead, but Napier is not. Now 68. Now, in Britain, I've had so much going on, starting with the Savile case, but even before the Savile case with the bigwigs in England. I've read some of the articles here where even British lords came out in mainstream were getting young boys off the street, basically. One of them had a strange thing. He liked to have the young boy poop on top of a glass pane, and the Lord would sit underneath it and watch it. It's strange. But the other ones, they know more what the world agenda is, because Freemasonry was a revolutionary arm, basically, for centuries to bring in this new world order across the world. But anyway, and they were a front for the big boys that had been around for a lot longer. This article here says, abuse scandal probes widen. The man who may hold the key to the UK's biggest paedophile network ever, Charles Napier, could provide vital evidence for police investigations for investigating a child abuse scandal spanning 3 decades. And it says in the picturesque Dorset town of Sherburn, Charles Napier is an upstanding member of the community. That actually generally is what they mean by in Masonry upstanding, by the way, for those who don't know. He is known as a respected retired language teacher, playwright and 3-inch thing, but I can't fathom it at all. But you have all these weirdos in positions of power, you understand. And I think it goes with power myself. I think there's psychopathic perverts, even to get up there, you see. But you also have, you see, networks and societies. Everyone who has to join it has become a Mason. Remember, low Masons know nothing at all, according to Albert Pike.